I just need to make sure it's not going to talk back at me. And then I'm good to go. Right. Being live streamed. It's good. All right. So I was going to introduce myself, but maybe I'll wait until next week to introduce myself when there will be more people near Hashem. We're starting with chapter 4. Over the last 2 years, we took a year to do chapter 1. We may not have even finished it. Chapter 1 is very long in the Targum. And then last year we got through chapters 2 and 3 as well. And hopefully this year we'll do chapters 4 and 5. A little bit about Targum, particularly the fact that Esther has 2 major Targumim. The Chumash also has more than one Targum. It has Targum Onkelos, which Chazal approved of, and it has a Targum known as Targum Yonatan, and another version of that, which is known as Targum Yerushalmi. They're identical in large parts, and then every once in a while there are 2 different versions of it, and so they get printed. Although it's called Yonatan, it's not actually from the Tana, from Yonatan ben Uziel. It was originally just Tap Chip Chip Yud Targum Yerushalmi, because it's an Eretz Yisrael style Targum. The difference is that there are slightly different dialects of Aramaic. Targum Onkelos used the more universal Aramaic, which was the Aramaic that was also used in Bavel. It was the Aramaic that was used by merchants all over the Mideast and the Mediterranean. And so that's what the Bavli is written in. That's what the Targum Onkelos is written in. And more or less, that's what the first Targum to Esther is also written in. Then the Torah itself has these additional ones, and then it also has a Targum that was written by Rav Sadia Gaon, which is a much later version and has Arabic mixed in with it, and it's sort of a Neo-Aramaic. Okay, so, but the Targum for Nevi'im was in fact written by the Tana Yonatan ben Uziel, who's buried in Amuka. And Chazal have only good things to say about that. And he did, in fact, include a great deal of Agadata in the Targum. So the Targum is not what we would call a literal translation. It's not word for word. It's Targum Onkelos gets the closest to doing that. But it's also a perush. It includes much other kind of material. Some of the Targumim on Chumash include halachic material as well as some of the Agadata, the story background kinds of stuff. And in Targum to the Ketuvim, it's not attributed to Yonatan ben Uziel by Chazal, so we're not quite sure who wrote it. But the first Targum was known in the time of the Mishnah, so it's of the same age, and it may have been written by Yonatan ben Uziel. I just don't know that. I haven't found a resource that tells me that one or the other. Targum Sheni was certainly written much later. Like around the time of Esther Rabbah, which is written during the time of the Gemara, maybe as late as the time of the Gaonim. Targum Sheni is mentioned by Rav Hai Gaon, which is near the end of the time of the Gaonim, shortly before the time of the Rishonim, which puts it only about 1,200 years ago at the most. So it certainly wasn't written at the time of the Megillah, and it wasn't written, it wasn't even written while the second Beit HaMikdash was still standing. And as a result, there are often things which feel asynchronous about it. But it's actually a literary, both of the Targumei on Esther are actually, they're a literary genre of their own. They start with the story of the Megillah. And they not only explain all of the backstory that they think is important to you, but they're teaching, they're teaching hashkafa, they're teaching how to look at the world, they're teaching, why was this going on? And they're bringing in all sorts of other things. Targum Rishon is shorter, in places considerably shorter than Targum Sheni, but that's what it is. And I did email you, Sima, and anybody else who I knew was registered, which isn't everybody by a long shot. But because when I originally sent out the link, I sent it out as a link that you didn't have to register. You can just join in. And I'm perfectly happy to have people do that. But if anybody who listens to this later on, or anybody, if anybody wants me to be able to send them the playlist so that they can listen to it without having to go hunt for us on YouTube, or if anybody wants to have the text sent to them, then I need you to actually go back into Zoom and to register so that I have your email, so that I can send you the playlist link and the text that you need. Most Mikro Gedolot have Esther in the back of Chumash Shmot, and usually the Targum is with it. My particular one has Esther with Rashi and Ibn Ezra and somebody else, and the Rav Yaakov Melissa and the Targum. And then at the end of the Megillah, it has Targum Sheni as a separate story on its own, which is almost as many pages long as the Megillah and all of its Mefarshim are. And it also comes with, sometime later, much later, Targum Sheni was translated into Hebrew. Targum Sheni was originally written in Aramaic. It was translated into Hebrew. The name of the translation into Hebrew is Patshegan Haktav, which of course is a phrase from the Megillah itself, when Haman had all of the had his decree written and into all the different languages, etc. But it also had to be written in a way that could be read. So it had to both. So it was both written into transliteration. Okay, so that it was written in an alphabet that people could read, a transliteration of the original Aramaic document, because that was the language of the court still in Achashverosh's time. Then it was also translated into the language that the people of that particular province spoke. And so Patshegan Hakatav is the explanation. It's basically what a Targum is. It's an explanation of what it's supposed to be. And so Patshegan Hakatav on Targum Sheni is taking it from the original Aramaic back into close to modern Hebrew. And so for people who have good Hebrew, you can read along in the Patshegan Hakatav and see if you can figure out what what's going on with the story there. But the story is way more than just the story in the Megillah. Okay. Without further ado, let's dive into the first verse of chapter Dalet. Okay. The last line of chapter Gimel was, here, I'll tell you what, I'm going to share, now I am going to share my screen, and I'm going to start by just doing the, where am I? Here I am, no. Oh, this is the right one, but it's the wrong window there. Okay, I'm going to have to. Share, and then I need to switch it over to being the right window within that application. So this, I'm using Svarya to give me the text of the Megillah itself and to give me the first Targum. Svarya does not yet have Targum Sheni or Pachek and Katav entered into their database, which is why I had to mess around with taking pictures. And Baruch Hashem, I have a friend who helped me put together a document from the pictures for the first verse, and I'll do the rest of it myself. All right, you're going to either open up or you're not going to open up. At any rate, I'll tell you from the outside, the last verse that we heard was that the runners went forth with great urgency with the word of the king to tell all the other, cities what was going on. And the information, the law was given over also in Shushan, the capital. The king and Haman sat down to drink. Okay, this is the previous verse. The king and Haman sat down to drink, and the city of Shushan was Nevocha, right? And this is one of those verses where we read it with the nigun of reading Echa, because it's like it was the decree of destruction against the Jews has just gone forth into the world. And so that was the end of that chapter. And now we have the first.
Nechama?